It's the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast with your hosts, the Wolf and Action Jackson, who are keeping rock alive by talking classic rock, hard rock, progressive rock, heavy metal, 80s music, early MTV, UK vs. US chart success, and much more. This is the home of classic album and live concert reviews and your place for interviews with artists and legends. You're rocking with the Wolf. Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to episode number 184 of the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast. Brought to you by me, your host, Mac B. the Wolf, and I will be joined, as usual, by my partner in crime from the East Coast of the United States of America, Mr. Gary Action Jackson. And we appreciate everybody tuning in last week to hear of our live review of Mammoth with Wolfgang Van Halen live, their last North American show before they take off for Europe for the summer, opening for the likes of Metallica and big festivals everywhere. For all our European fans, don't miss the chance to see Wolfie and the Mammoth live. That was a fun show. And our usual listeners probably know that we have a monthly show called First Concert Memories, where we bring on a guest to talk about the first night they saw a particular band and how it might have changed their lives. And the most recent was by our friend Britt Lightning, the lead guitarist from Vixen and musical director of Rock Camp, who told an amazing story about going to see a bunch of bands, really, at Foxborough Stadium in her teenage years, with Stone Temple Pilots at the top of the bill, and running from the cops, and jumping the barrier, and getting maced, and losing her friends, and crying her eyes out, and crowd surfing, and loving every minute of it. It's a great story from a real rock and roller. Definitely check out First Concert Memories 11 and hear from Britt. But that inspired us to go back and re-examine Stone Temple Pilots, because when we were living together in college in the early to mid-90s, the Stone Temple Pilots were pretty darn big. They were kind of part of the grunge movement, but I'm not so sure that they were a grunge band necessarily, just that they played hard, heavy rock, and yes, many of their songs were about heavy-duty things, usually like heroin, as Scott Weiland, their lead singer and lyricist, wrote about most of the time. So because their sophomore effort, Purple, was turning 30 on June 7th, 2024, we thought it'd be a great chance to re-examine that album, one that we probably hadn't listened to much since college, and kind of see what was it that made it so big at the time. And so that's what we're going to do here on this episode. Go down the album that brought you Vaseline and Big Empty and Pretty Penny and Unglued. But first, we have a little bit of business to take care of. As always, we love to mention that we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, a family of about 100 different shows, all about music. There really is something in there for everyone. You can learn more at pantheonpodcast.com or follow on socials at PantheonPods. And we love to talk about our sponsor, rarevinyl.com, who's based in the UK, folks, but they ship all around the world, and they procure record collections from all around the world as well. So if you're looking for that rare Japanese release that you always wanted, they might just have it. If you're looking for that European picture disc that you could never find stateside, they might just have it. Looking for deleted singles or mint condition first prints of your favorite albums, posters, tour programs, they've got over 250,000 items at rarevinyl.com. And the amazing thing is, to sponsor us, they gave us a code UGLY. So when you go there, you can use the code UGLY at checkout and save yourself 10% on your entire order, not just one item. And it's great if you can find that one rare treasure that you've always wanted. But if you're going to save 10%, hey, go find everything that goes along with it. Go find all the singles. See if you can find a tour program. See if you can find a print from a different country. Your record collection will thank you. So make sure you use that one-time code UGLY to save a big fat 10% at rarevinyl.com. Now back to STP. I'm not a huge fan of grunge, and so in my brain, that's kind of where Stone Temple Pilots live. But I had to shed all that. I had to come with a more open mind when we're re-examining this 30 years later. And I got to tell you, I think this album is pretty good. I think it stands up really well on its own, doesn't need to be lopped in with all the grunge stuff. And I'm glad that we had a chance to go back and take a look at this. Because when we're looking at the albums we want to do during a year, there's some definitelys, there's some no's, and then there's a lot in the middle like, well, maybe. And thanks to Britt Lightning coming on to talk about her Stone Temple Pilots experience, I thought, all right, they're having a 30th anniversary, let's do it. So here we go. This is me and Jackson talking about Stone Temple Pilots' Purple as it turns 30 here on The Wolf. Nothing like starting your day with an album all about heroin addiction. Nothing'll pick you up or make you feel better. No, it's honestly, I've got this on CD. I have had it for about 30 years now, and I bet I haven't broken this out since we were in college.
I was going to say, is the plastic still on it?
Yeah, we were in college. I forgot how big this was and how much this album was listened to in that 94 to 95 time period between when it came out and when we graduated.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I kind of forgot this was the second record, and they had the huge debut and kind of came out of nowhere. And then this was the big follow-up. And did anybody else have problems in this band, or was it just Scott Weiland?
Well, his are the ones that got all the press. I mean.
Right. I kind of feel like if they had any other problems, that was kind of minor to what Scott was going through. It just seemed like you always thought he was going to turn the corner because they had a couple of bad times. Then he was back. Then he was down again, then he was back, and then he was just gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of par for the course for lead singers in these grunge bands. Now, I don't necessarily think STP was a grunge band, but because they came out of that grunge era. And some of these songs, I mean, the first song on the album is very grungy, if you ask me. It may be why they put it as the first song. But Kurt Cobain had a heroin problem, wrote about all sorts of horrible stuff. Lane Staley of Alice in Chains had a heroin problem, wrote about all this stuff. So it's part of riding the wave of what's going on in the industry. All the record companies jumped onto grunge. Ooh, this is what the kids want. Well, let's shove it down their throats till they can't take anymore.
And I think that was always one of the knocks against this band too, is like, well, you say you're grunge, but you're not. And they kind of were like, well, we never said that. It was kind of the record company saying, hey, here's these guys too. They kind of sound like this. Mash them in with everybody else.
Yeah. It's like, Atlantic's like, oh, Geffen's got a big grunge. Well, we got to have a big grunge, right?
Right.
So, yeah, and the CD here is really, it's because all of the lyrics are written by Weiland. They kind of have his, white legal pad, or maybe it was yellow, but they did it in black and white, and, just all the scribblings of the lyrics with a few pictures of the band at that time, the DeLeo brothers and the drummer, Eric Kretz. And so we do this, when we do an album, we kind of go back to where they were, before this, leading up to this, kind of what state is the band in at this point. And yeah, the first album, Core, came out in 1992, and it was a pretty big success. I mean, as far as it had Sex Type Thing on it, it had Wicked Garden on it, Creep and Plush. It got way up on the charts. I mean, it went to number 3 on Billboard. It went to top 30 in the UK, top 10 in Canada. It kind of went top 20 around the world.
I think it sold like 8 million, didn't it? Something like that.
8 million in the US.
Yeah, that's huge for a debut record.
For a debut, yeah. But now this was the time of big fat record sales, As far as albums of the 90s go, as far as top-selling albums of the 1990s on Billboard, it went to 93 with over 8 million sold in the U.S. So that's pretty darn strong. So they're like, oh, okay, well, we got to capitalize on these guys, right? So they kind of pushed them into doing MTV Unplugged, and it obviously had stuff like Creep and stuff off of the first album, but it also featured Big Empty, which wasn't there yet. It wasn't. It came out on the second album, Purple. They did give you a little bit of a preview of stuff to come on the MTV Unplugged, and I got to tell you, Big Empty was huge off that MTV Unplugged record.
Right. So it's almost like they never really went away, right? They had the record, they had the tour, then they did this, then I don't know if the movie The Crow came out before that. I don't know what the timeline was, but it was on that. So it kind of just rolled into that. The two albums were basically just pushed together.
I mean, kind of. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. You're used to taking a couple years between records and stuff like that. But at this time, it was just kind of, and I don't know, I felt like when you're in college like that, it's a little bit of a time warp. It's like, what's the difference between sophomore year and junior year? Okay, we weren't roommates. Okay, yeah, that I remember. But other than that, it's like everything else just kind of.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Like you could tell me a story and I would say, now, what year was that? Oh, was it? I don't remember. Yeah. It does kind of get pushed together. And this was kind of an interesting dynamic too, because you were talking about his legal pads. I think that the deal was the band would write the songs, would write the music, and then he would come in and put his lyrics in on top. So I don't know how much of a or a collaborative deal this was, or was it music first? Now hurry up, get these lyrics together,
and then sing it, you junkie.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, apparently Scott and Robert were really having problems communicating, or they were fighting all the time. And I think before they made this, they took a month off because they just couldn't get along or something like that. They were obviously having issues, probably some of it coming down to Scott's erratic behavior, because he is a great rock star, but
in all facets.
But yeah, I mean, he's also like pushing the limits of what humans can do.
Right. And I get the feeling that even though Dean does a lot of the songwriting, Robert is the musical director for the band.
Probably so.
And so, yeah, I could see how if you were kind of the person in charge and more of like kind of almost like the business manager, to have this dude suddenly become, well, maybe not even suddenly, but deteriorate to the point where he's very unreliable. Yeah, that would make you lose it, because you've got time constraints that are on you. Like there was a story about how I think Dean was saying he was tracking some song with Brendan O'Brien, and other people are coming into the studio.
What do you mean other people?
Like whoever the next band.
Oh, I got you.
They're already starting to set up, and they're like, hey, what's going on? Oh yeah, we're starting today. Well, we need to get this finished then, because apparently O'Brien was Mr. like, on to the next thing, let's go.
Oh, I see. Okay. Didn't realize that. And he worked with a lot of people, Brendan.
Yeah,
O'Brien.
apparently he got bored really quick. Like if this wasn't happening fast enough, like all of a sudden he was just kind of like, well, what else is going on? So you kind of had to keep him, you had to go along with his schedule to make sure that his attention was on you and not thinking about something else.
Well, yeah, and he was, as far as this age range of this era of artists, I mean, he worked with Pearl Jam and STP and Soundgarden and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Rage Against the Machine, and then went on to work with those new metal bands that I hate, like Korn and Limp Bizkit and Incubus. But he also, had the chance to work with AC/DC and Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan because of all this stuff that, he had accomplished with these other bands. And yeah, the first album sold 8 million copies. Well, okay, awesome. Let's get cracking. Let's get the second one out because it'll ship platinum. Let's just get it out there,
That's crazy. But you're right. This was a time when people were buying records. Like there was new great stuff coming out like every week, and people would line up at the CD store to get them. I don't know how many records they sold, but probably more CDs at this point in time.
At this point, it was all CDs for the most part. You could still get records, but they were, well, I don't know. I mean, it would be hard having a turntable, I feel like, in college. CDs made so much more sense.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody that bought records back then. It was after records were cool.
Mm-hmm. But before they came back.
Right, correct. Yeah.
No, this is the heyday of CDs. There's no digital downloading. So, yeah, lots of albums sold 3, 4, 5, 6, or 8 million. Like this. I mean, in the 90s, it's ranked 93rd, yet it sold 8 million. Okay, that means there's 92 albums that sold more than 8 million copies in the U.S. in the 90s, In fact, this one, Purple, got to 99 on that list by selling 6 million copies. Plus, they had MTV Unplugged in the middle, which was not only over MTV, but getting Big Empty before you could get it on Purple was kind of a big deal, and they played the hell out of it.
And they also had, and I'm trying to look at the timeline for this too, but they also had Dancing Days. From that Zeppelin.
That was 1995. Yeah, it was called Iconium, a tribute to Led Zeppelin. But you're right, that was
okay. So that was after. Okay,
more STP on the radio, in your face all the time. But I mean, I remember once a rock band has 3 pretty big songs on one album, then I'm like obligated to go get it. I feel like. If there's one, I'm like, okay, there's one, that's good. I'll keep my eye on it. If there's 2, depends on how much I like it. If I love them both, then I'm like, okay, I might get it. If there's 2, but I'm still not sure about them, like, are these guys really all time? Are they CD worthy? I'm not sure. But once you've got 3, then it's like, all right, well.
Just take my money.
Now I have to go get it because people are going to want to hear it. If you're going to have people over, you got to play the music of the day. I can't just play 70 Stones all the time.
Hey everybody, this is Britt Lightning from Vixen, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
So we'll jump into it here. The first track, the lovely Meatplow.
Interesting title.
Interesting title, yeah. And, well, look, all the lyrics are by Weiland, and then all the music, it's either by Dean and Robert together or one of them solo.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally, Scott will get a writing credit on the music like he and Robert did on Unglued together. All four of them got credit on Vaseline, which is great because that was a really big hit for them. So even Eric gets a little slice of that. That's good. But the rest of it is basically the DeLeo brothers making the music one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the two of them on Meatplow. This is a grunge song.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, with that, especially with that bass intro, that nasty down in the basement riff that he's got. And then, yeah, it goes into, I would call it a grunge riff.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, it's a little Alice in Chainsy on vocals, honestly, the way that Scott's doing that. And I think that might be part of why, because as far as some of the other songs of the album go, I don't know if this is a great way to start off the album or not. But if you're going for that grunge thing and Alice in Chains is still big and Nirvana's still big and you want to get them from the get-go and say, yes, this is a grunge album by a grunge band, you put this one on there, I guess.
Yeah, interesting, because I have that kind of that same note here of like, you know, opening track question mark. But I think you're right. If you want to try and cement that as, hey, this is still goes together. If you like that, buy this record. That's why you did this.
I think so, because yeah, my note was interesting first song. But this might not be about heroin, although I think it kind of is in some ways. It's also, I think, anti-media who are always portraying him as this heroin addict and having troubles with his girlfriend at the time or whatever.
I think as much as you want to do this, as much as you want to be famous, as much as you want to sell 1 million records and be out on tour, no one is really ready for that. And especially in a band like this, where he got the bulk of the spotlight.
Yes,
it'll crush you pretty quick. And it's just, you know, everything that you do, everything that you say is either taken the wrong way, out of context. They want to make you a character, and that is tough on a person's psyche.
Or they just blow it all up, you know. And
yeah,
you say something, you know, because you're being snarky or whatever, and they blow that up into, you know, this is his whole philosophy. He's like, no, I was just itching for some drugs. You were in my face. I said something nasty, and now that's who I am, you know. But I mean, I think it's pushing back against the media and then going to heroin saying, you're my friend. You take care of all this for me, right?
It's always there. It's always going to be there for you. And the other thing is too, you sell this many records, you have enough money where that's not a problem either. You can always get it.
Yeah. Plus it has some bad language in it. Has the F word a couple times, you know, throughout. So that always gets the kids excited.
Especially now or at that point in time, because I would imagine that they had to have the sticker on the front of that, right? The explicit lyrics. And so, yeah, that was always, ooh.
Yeah, it's a beacon. Buy me.
Yeah.
Yeah, way to go, Tipper Gore. You just sold rock music to the masses. But
right, I mean, again, it's you have the relationship with the band that's getting a little You have the relationship with the media. They're just trying to beat me down, but there's my friend.
There's my friend.
Right, correct. Always be there for me.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that's what we're going to encounter a lot on this album here. Although when we did Alice in Chains, when it turned 30, was it at Dirt? It was so depressing. At the end of it, I'm like, I'm never listening to this ever again. You know, because I'm like, it's obvious what this is about, and the songs are all like, you know. But this album is great. You know, it's listenable, but this first one is so grungy, heroin-y. Not my favorite song on the record.
I would agree, and I would say I think that's why these guys don't get enough credit. They kind of get lumped in, and you're right, Dirt was just brutal, and every single track was just dark and plotting, where this is kind of more all over the map. And I think that Weiland doesn't get enough credit either for being, even though his voice doesn't really change the way that he delivers it changes enough so it's not the same in every song.
I think he's a fantastic vocalist. And yeah, he's, especially now that he's passed on, I think he's overlooked. I think he gets dumped in with grunge. I thought the stuff that he did on Velvet Revolver was killer.
Okay.
And yeah, this is a strong album. I mean, as far as the second album, most second albums are the sophomore slump. They're kind of, they go down a little bit. I'm not saying this isn't as good a Core or better than Core, but I think it's right in line with it. I think it's like, yeah, they continue to kick ass here.
And I think they're better songwriters now.
Probably so.
Yeah, I think they've got a couple more miles under their belts where Core was kind of right off the bat. Like, I didn't realize these guys weren't really around that much before that. I think they only formed in like 1990 as a band.
Oh, wow.
So they took off pretty quick. They didn't have, 10 years of writing together. And even though, and this is the way I understand the story, even though Robert and Dean are brothers, it wasn't like they were writing music together for a long time. I think Robert was out in California, met Weiland, was like, oh yeah, let's put this band together. Oh, you know who should play for us? My brother. Brought him in from New Jersey. But so I always kind of thought of them like, oh, well, they must have been working together since they were kids writing these songs. Not really. I think they wrote independently and then got together to do this.
Well, that makes sense as far as how the album's songs are written, because, Loungefly, Interstate Love Song, Kitchenware and Candy Bars, that's Robert DeLeo. He wrote those on his own. Whereas Dean wrote Army Ants, Big Empty, Pretty Penny on his own.
Right. And you'd figure that with the brother deal, it would be all of them. All those songs would be the two of them together.
But it's not. Yeah.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the Gallagher brothers or the Robinson brothers.
Kinda.
It is not always buddy. But going into song number 2, Vaseline, obviously this is a huge hit for them. And I mean, kind of kept them in the public eye, on the radio, on MTV. Number 1, mainstream rock. Number 2, alternative airplay, because alternative airplay was a big deal at this time still. Kind of rose up a little bit in the 80s with college bands, when the Smiths, or like when REM was still kind of an underground band or whatever. Billboard got it up to 38. U.S. rock album tracks was 6, and U.S. modern rock tracks was 7. So they're on all these different charts. Didn't do as well in the UK. UK rock and metal went to 23, but on the UK singles, it went to 48, which means it didn't go on top of Pops, and it didn't do nearly as well. That's why it went 6 times platinum in the US, but only silver, not even gold, silver in the UK. They were just more into Cool Britannia with like Blur and Oasis and stuff at this point. And this American grunge, I don't think it's like, okay, yeah, some of that's good, but it wasn't dominating like it was in America.
They weren't ready for all of those weirdos over there.
I wish I was living in Britain at this time.
Yeah.
I hated grunge. And I love Oasis, and I would have loved to have been in the middle of all that, but whatever.
Although you say that, but this was really kind of almost the end of grunge in 94, 95, and then that was kind of it.
Yeah, because they knew that all these people were heroin addicts. Like, we can't trust these people. Let's get some nice, clean-cut kids like Hootie and the Blowfish and make their album go double diamond. And that's exactly what happened our senior year of college.
Yeah, that's a sore subject. Don't get me started on that.
All right.
I can't imagine, like, I remember when that record came out, and I there were a lot of people that we knew that had that.
Oh yeah.
The Blowfish record. And I thought, you can't really like to listen to this. This is just like something you would put on like at a dentist's office or something. Unbelievable. Oh, this is my favorite
Or
record.
when you have girls over into the dorm room and you can't just put on grunge. Like, here you go, girls, here's something for you. Oh, I love this song. Oh, yes, I'm guilty of it. Yeah.
Girls, you want to listen to Black Sabbath 4? No. What's wrong with you?
Okay, here's Hootie and the Blowfish again.
In your wine cooler. Have a nice night.
But I used to love this one. Actually, the B-side was Meatplow, but on the 12 inches, they also had Andy Warhol Live and Cracker Man Live, released June 1st, 1994 as a single. You kind of has this little, the beginning, it's kind of building and building until you get to that killer riff. Yeah, it's pretty good. What I didn't realize in doing research for this is when I guess Scott was a kid, he thought life in the fast lane was flies and Vaseline. So that's kind of where that lyric comes from.
But it's like, and you say, what? But then when you're a kid, you mishear a lot of stuff, especially if you're not really paying attention.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I mean, I guess if you're really young, well, how come why didn't you know it was life in the fast lane? Well, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Flies in the Vaseline, life in the okay, whatever.
I know what flies and Vaseline are. I don't know what life in the fast lane even means. Never heard that before.
That. He's a little kid. He's in the car and he's just flies in the Vaseline. What? Yeah,
flies in the Vaseline surely make you lose your mind. But there were 3 different videos of this directed by Kevin Kerslake. 3, you could see 3 different ones on MTV. So that shows the kind of power they have when you sell 8 million of your first record and then you're on MTV Unplugged. Yeah, we're not just going to do one video for this. We're going to make a few. Oh, that's so cool. Then they can play it several times a day. Yeah, great. Second single ever released off the album. Did awfully well for him. But again, being stuck in Vaseline, it's about heroin addiction. It's being stuck,
And watching going back and watching the videos for this, you can see that people make fun of the 80s for like, these are silly videos. The 90s videos were just as silly. Just random effects and random photos of things and people dressed in odd costumes. What does it mean? It doesn't matter. We're just throwing it at you 5 times a day.
Yep. 2 times in it has rendered me punch drunk and without bail. Think I'd be safer all along. Search for things that you can't see, going blind, out of reach, somewhere in the Vaseline. You're looking for answers. You're looking for spiritual guidance with this heroin, but it's still always out of reach and you're stuck in this goo.
Right.
Which is heroin addiction.
And you figure at this point in time too, you've been through the big first record, you went through your tour, you do the MTV Unplugged, you're starting to get burned out also. Like you're starting to I need a break from this. But whoever, whether it's the rest of the band, the management, the record company, they won't let you rest because they know like you said, the second album ships platinum. We know we've got this hot property. I'm not going to let you take a break.
That's right. That's right. Get out there and make me money, damn you.
Correct. Dance around. Although in this one too, I like when he would do I like when Dean would do the waka waka in the middle there. It's just a different effect. It doesn't all sound the same.
It's true. Now moving on to Lounge Fly. What's this one about?
This we get a little darker. This has got like that backward intro to it, which was another trick that they benefited from because this was the intro to MTV News for a while too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so you were listening to it without really listening to it, so that hyped it. I read that they were in some kind of they were on a plane on the Atlantic jet and they thought it was going to go down. And so it's like dark foreboding, like what does the future hold? Like, are we on the right track? Are we headed down are we going to crash into the ocean? Like what is going on here?
I think I'm free, but the dogs won't release me. Don't have a nickel or a dollar, but you feed me. My bottle's empty, but you always refuel me. I feel like I'm sinking, but you won't let me drown. Me. Said she'd be my woman, said she'd be my man. That's got to be about heroin, doesn't it? Like the person who takes care of everything for you.
It's okay, relieve me. Please leave me, you kill me. The lounge fly, the fire bring me. I think I'm free, but the dogs, they won't release me.
There's an acoustic bridge, and then that goes into some psychedelic guitar, which is kind of cool. They actually recorded this at Paisley Park, home of Prince.
Oh, in Minneapolis. Cool.
Yeah. So Big Empty was recorded in May of 1993, about a year before it actually comes out. And that's why you can hear it on MTV Unplugged because they already had it down. Lounge Fly was July of that year. I guess they were in Minneapolis, maybe. I'm not sure. But then March of 94 is kind of when they did most of the rest of the stuff. But, what's a lounge fly? Someone who's sitting around having drinks all day, telling bullshit stories, right? And that's kind of what Scott is, except I think his drink is heroin instead of drink.
Yeah, and you get into is this about drugs or is this about a woman? I can't give her what I take away. And so, are you just this vacuum of a person?
I know. Please refill my soul. Yeah. I want a F word. But do you need me? I don't know. Said she'd be my woman. Said she'd be my man. Will you be my man? Because you'll take anything, any kind of parent to take care of you.
Well, and I think that's the other thing too, is you get this from a couple of different people. You're on stage and everybody loves you, right? The whole crowd, oh, we can't get enough of you. You're the greatest thing ever. You know, we'll love you so much. And then you get off stage and it's like, well, where'd everybody go? Mm-hmm. I'm alone. Now no one loves me. Now I feel like no one will take care of me. Wah, wah, wah. And then that's why you have, toxic relationships with other people, women, and then you get into drugs because, again, that's always a constant.
That's exactly right. But what isn't a constant is getting a number one song, and that's what the fourth song, Interstate Love Song, did for them. Number one on mainstream rock, again, 2 on alternative airplay, 18 on radio play, 9 modern rock, 12 album tracks. But I remember Interstate Love Song being such a big hit for them, like you couldn't get away from it.
Yes. And it kind of has that cool intro before you hit the rock part of it, and it's
a little slide guitar.
And you just kind of feel like you just want to go drive someplace when you hear this. Like it's just a cool tune to cruise around with.
I thought it was great. Leaving on a Southern Tree, and only yesterday you lied. Promises what I seem to be. Only watch the time go by. All these things I said to you. Is it you? Is it me? No, it's a different song. Anyway, yeah, but apparently, doing research, he's talking to his girlfriend, Janine, about, oh, yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, everything's great here in the studio. Yeah, we're doing great. But he wasn't. He was still hating himself and doing enough heroin to make that feel better. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I guess I like the video. It came out in the fall, September 9th, 1994. This was the third single released, if I'm not mistaken.
And on this one, I think this is a Robert song. I don't think he gets enough credit as a musician. He plays the bass, but he plays some funky bass parts. He sings the harmonies. He's the only one that sings harmonies with Weiland. And I always thought it was cool that he played the bass more like an upright. Mm-hmm. Like he had the head, the neck and the head kind of up by his head like you would. So he started off that way. And I just think his voice goes very well with Scott Weiland's.
Yeah, it's too bad that wasn't something they could flesh out a little bit more, I feel like. It's like, because having that, like, I won't call it a backup singer, harmony singer, it just thickens the song up. It makes for great sing-along vocals, to get the crowd into it. People singing along while they're in their cars. That makes for a great sound.
Yeah, and to me, it's much better than just having the main singer doubled, because they do that a lot. So then you can't do that live, but it's cool to have somebody else step up to the microphone, especially like a Michael Anthony, and really have them sing or really have them contribute a part that means something.
Absolutely. But once again, our buddies in the UK didn't get this one. Went to 53 in the UK.
Really? Just can't make them happy at all.
No, they were just way into, the Verve or whoever.
Who was it that got sued by the Stones? Was it the Verve, the Bittersweet Symphony? And they're like, yeah, you ripped that off from us. You owe us 50% of the royalties. Whoops.
I did not realize that. I remember the video with him walking down the street. Anyway, we move on to Still Remains.
Okay.
Now, this is an album track. I actually like the chords here. This is a little different than just heavy-duty grunge stuff, man. I kind of liked this one.
And this one's nice because it's upbeat, but then the lyrics are kind of bummer. So the two of them go together, and I'd rather have you give me that than bummer lyrics with bummer
music. Yeah. I'm totally with you. Yeah. And this is one that the brothers wrote together, at least the music and stuff like that. So I thought, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm digging this, but then, yeah, it's still heavy. Scott's asking his girlfriend, if you die first, will you ask if you can bring a friend? Because everyone's assuming he's going to be the one who dies kind of like any minute now.
Right. And I didn't get that the first couple of times I listened to it because it was kind of, what's he saying? Wait, what is he saying? If you should die before me, ask if you can bring a friend. Oh, that's horrible. I'm sorry.
Yeah. She holds my hand. We share a laugh. Slipping orange blossom breezes. Love is still and sweat remains. Take a bath and I'll drink the water that you leave. Okay. Means you're way into her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Skin is smooth. I steal a glance. Dragonflies are gliding over. So this is about how much you love this person, how important they are to you. But still, is it something that you're giving up? I mean, flesh is warm with naked feet, stabbing thorns, and you become me. Is that about you going into her? I don't know. I'm not sure. The music is better than the lyrics, I feel like, on this one.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's a really cool album track. You've never heard this on the radio, and then you get to find it on the album and say, "Oh, okay, it keeps the party going." It's nice that it's sandwiched in between these two as more of an upbeat tune.
What, you don't think Pretty Penny's an upbeat tune?
I think it might be the opposite of that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, acoustic to start, Pretty Penny, and I guess it's Weiland trying to prove that he's not a drug addict or just a drug addict, that he could get over it. But it's about a girl who ventured in the world and paid the price. It's interesting how he's juxtaposing his own sex. Like he sings about being a girl or needing a man or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's really just him needing someone to love him, and it's always heroin kind of thing. Always heroin. Always. Can't sing about anything else. It's like, hey, the shit sells. Let's get him to make another one fast before he ODs.
Gone away and found the pearl, but the price she paid. Gone when you wake in the morning. Gone when you find that there's no one sleeping. Gone. Pretty Penny was her name. She was loved and we all will miss her.
Well, and again, too, he's under the gun to come up with these lyrics kind of after the fact. Just that's the way that they did things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean that's got to be tough when you've got 2, maybe 3 guys that can write the music, and then they're done. They're like, hey, we've got like 3 songs ready to go. Where are these lyrics? Okay, so yeah, what is your go-to thing? What is the thing that's on your mind all the time right now?
Drugs.
Yeah, correct. There you go. And
Drugs.
So that has to be tough when you've got 3 people plus the 3 band guys plus the producer staring at you like we're waiting. We're go.
Waiting for words on paper.
And it better be good. This better be gold.
Well, it did get up into number 12 as far as mainstream rock. It was played on the radio. So something came out of it. Actually, on the internet, it would say it differs greatly in style and serves as a calm acoustic interlude between the distorted and delirious Still Remains and the aggressive, sinister Silver Gun Superman.
And it's nice. He's got the bongos on there. It's kind of, in the floating in the back. And then he goes in, he puts the bass drum in a little bit. Yeah, it's a nice, I don't want to say placeholder, but it's a nice track in between these two.
I agree. But then Silver Gun Superman, I mean, that's about nothing but drugs, man.
And we're back to grunge mode again.
Yes. After you have that nice acoustic stuff and Pretty Penny, now it's a beautiful song, throughout, before, and then back to that big riff that they do. It's nice, but I mean, is it about jealousy that the silver gun, the needle is causing, or is it about the media getting in and getting unfair? Or is this between Robert and Scott having fights and suddenly they have to take a break because his heroin's becoming such a problem? But as long as he uses that heroin and comes up with great lyrics,
everything's cool.
Isn't it great? Don't you want me to stay on this so I can deliver that stuff?
And that's the problem, is that do you come up with better stuff when you're out there? And so then is it really in everybody's interest for you to stay like this? We need you to be this front man. We need you to be outrageous. We need you to show up with purple hair and pink hair. And he had the megaphone that he'd use, just wacky stuff. That's what we need from you. And I don't feel like it. Well, you better start feeling like it again.
Right. So here's a little something to make you feel better. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure they never encouraged him to do heroin, but If he was acting like a prick, it's like, go do something to make you unpricky. And we come back with, okay, now I feel better. All right, then, good.
I can hear when the big whisper sweetly. Jealousy is a weapon, you kill me. Keep it down for a truth you might tell. You told the lie, and I know it was mine.
I mean, I don't want to make light of heroin. It must be terrible to be in its grips, but if you are creative, it won't make you creative. It's like if you're an uncreative person, you take heroin, it's not like all of a sudden you can write all this great stuff. But if you are creative and it can do that to you, those feelings, both the highs and the lows, could probably create some incredible images in your mind that you can then put into song.
And then, see, that's the crappy part, because it's like, well, what do you want me to do? I get all of this gold while I'm in the middle of this. I shouldn't stop because that's my livelihood.
And what about our buddies, the Stones? We love Keith Richards. What's their best album? Exile on Main Street. How did they write that? Well, they all sat around in the chateau and waited for Keith to come down with a riff after he did heroin for a few days. Well, it's awfully good stuff. Maybe they should, kind of keep doing that.
I'm sorry you're trying to kill yourself, but keep it up.
But yes, well done.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's rock and roll comedian Don Jameson, and you are listening to the great, the fantastic podcast, The Ugly American Werewolf in London.
Okay, so now we get to Big Empty. This was the first single, came out May 22nd, 1994, but we got to know it because it came out on Unplugged in, was it November of 1993? November 17th to be exact. Little bit of controversy. Is this about screwing some chick in the car and then trying to get her home afterwards? Is this about getting high and coming down? Some people say it's both.
I'm glad that they included this on the record, because there's nothing I hate worse than when you hear it, well, especially at this point in time. You hear something on a soundtrack and you're like, oh, well, that's going to be, it's only there. Well, hell, I'm not going to buy that. So the fact that it was on this record was cool to me. The slide on this is just filthy disgusting.
Yeah, it's great.
It's fantastic. And that's why I'm going to say probably the three other guys in the band don't get enough credit. Dean doesn't have huge riffs a lot of the time. Like, he's not the big riff guy. He doesn't have huge solos, even though he does. He's got a lot in the toolbox there that he can kind of layer in these songs, and I think that's where he really shines.
These conversations kill, falling faster in my car. Time to take her home, her dizzy head is contemplated. Time to take her ride, it leaves today, no conversation.
Yeah, which is why they shouldn't probably be called a grunge band. It just happens to be that's kind of where they came out in the world at that time. But it went to 3 on mainstream rock. It went to 7 on alternative airplay. It was backed with Loungefly. That Conversations Kill thing.
Yeah.
Everyone was saying that, in the 1994 time. I remember that very vividly.
And I like the fact, too, that it starts off kind of slow and then bammo, it hits you with the big electric guitar.
Yeah, Dean wrote that music on that one. And you could tell there's a good bass underneath all of everything there. Wait, Dean is the bass player, right? Or is that Robert?
Dean is the guitarist. Robert is the bass player.
Yes, Robert is the bass player, but he played guitar on Vaseline and Loungefly and Pretty Penny and Silver Gun Superman and Kitchenware and Candy Bars, so he can step out a little bit on there. Let's move to Unglued.
Okay.
Because again, this was one that you heard, It got to 8 on mainstream rock and 16 on alternative airplay because it's got that killer riff, and this is a straight ahead kick-ass rock and roll song.
And it's nice because Big Empty it's good, but it takes a minute to get going, and it's kind of a big production, whereas this is more straight ahead. Straight ahead,
off and running.
Yeah.
This is absolutely about heroin addiction, about feeding it as your only option. Moderation is masturbation. It's not about masturbation. It's about taking a lot of heroin. but the riff is killer. You got to give the boys credit. Robert and Scott wrote this one together, apparently. So great riff, great stuff in there.
Yeah.
Scott, I don't know how he plays, how he comes up with music, but this one is great. I mean, it's awfully low in the album as far as it's the 9th track or whatever. This would have been a great way to start the album instead of Meatplow.
Correct. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if this was ever considered, but yeah, this would have been more of a way to get this thing going on a rocking note instead of the grunge note, but who knows?
They didn't ask us.
Yeah, right.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
Correct.
There's only a 50-50 chance you'll be alive to do it. So anyway, I like Unglued. I mean, it's one of my favorites on the album.
Mm-hmm.
Should have probably been higher up in the track listing. And it goes into Army Ants, which I'd kind of forgotten about.
Okay.
I think at some point I'm skipping to the end to get to the Ghost track, to be honest with you. But I always like to listen to Unglued. And then Army Ants, I don't know, is this about society being hypocritical?
It could be. And they want you to march along as a work, and don't have your own ideas, just do what it takes to keep the machine rolling.
Right. And then the media comes and blasts you. Oh, look, he's stepping out of line. He's different. He's not doing what we all think he should be doing, you know. I also think it was like, especially when you're a heroin addict, when people are really diving into your personal life and splotting it all over the media, all over the news and the newspapers, that's got to be really annoying. And it's amazing how many introverts have to be extroverts professionally. I think Scott's an introvert, and yet he has to go out there and be this crazy wild man for 2 hours, you know, with his shirt off, sweating, running around the stage, singing songs about nasty stuff. And then does he want to go back to being an introvert? You can't, right? Because people are expecting the wild man.
And it's tough too, because if you don't have a partner in crime, like if you don't have the Mick and Keith, it's tough because it's all on you. Like I know there were other dudes in the band. I know probably the other big person was going to be Robert to do interviews and stuff like that. But I'm sure at this point in time, everybody just wanted to talk to Scott. And it's like, what's going to come out of his mouth? What's he going to do? You know, when are they going to find him face down? And again, at this point in time, like Kurt Cobain was already dead, right? Because he was dead in...
Well, I thought he was dead in 94.
Yeah, ish time. So it's like, you know, are you going to be the next one? Are you going to go down the toilet? You know, we're basically just watching with glee to see your life come apart.
Yeah, no, yeah. Kurt died in April of 94. This comes out June of 94.
Okay. So are you going to end up the same way?
Are you the next Pied Piper that's going down? And look, all three of those guys, Lane Staley, Kurt Cobain, Scott Weiland, they all died. Mm-hmm. Scott made it the farthest.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt died in 94. He was 27, blew his brains out. Lane Staley made it, I think, past the late 90s. I think he made it into the 2000s, though he was a recluse.
Yeah.
And just killed himself very slowly with heroin. Scott got sober a couple times. He took a couple of hiatuses from the band, one of which was to form Velvet Revolver, which was awesome. Seeing Velvet Revolver live was so cool. Their first album was killer. Their second one was good too, but not as good as the first one. The first one was one of the best rock albums of the last 30 years. But yeah, I mean, you know, he just couldn't ever keep it together. I remember I saw him, and it may have been about when they were making Velvet Revolver, going to a meeting with his ex-wife. And of course, she's this model, you know, so she's got these couture clothes on. She has her hair done, just so covering her eye, coming to deal with this just drug addict, this bum who just happens to be an incredibly talented superstar. And she's like, I don't want you near the kids when you're all wasted. Like, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at her thinking, what did you see in him? Like, what's wrong with you, honey? I mean, I understand rock stars are cool and it's fun to go backstage and you might hook up with him for a while, but he's a wastoid. Like, you have options.
Well, yeah, but I think you got to figure too, like that whole persona, that whole lifestyle is very attractive. You know, everybody knows who you are instantly if you're with him. Yeah. I'm sure when he's on, it's fantastic. He's funny. He's charming. He's got this shtick. But then when he's off, when it's down, then it's really a problem. And then it starts like, well, yeah, now the bad times are more than the good times.
Yeah, well, yeah, it looked like from the look in her eyes and her face, it's like, yeah, she's been through the bad times. That's why she left. Yeah.
I am now tired of you. Because again, you always thought, or at least I always thought he had turned the corner. You know, like, especially since he made it out of the 90s into the early 2000s. Okay, this is it. He's back with the band. Everything's good. And then he just could never get away from it.
All right, now the last song on the album is listed on the album.
Correct.
Is Kitchenware and Candy Bars. Talk about Sell Me Down the River. But it does have some is there some string arrangement in there? Something in there.
Yeah, at the end part it comes in, yeah. So this is an interesting track at the end, because usually, we see these things as maybe like just the throwaway, or just we need one more, just throw it on there. There's a lot going on this.
Yeah.
And from what I've read, doing research for this, a lot of people really love this song. Like, they can't, anytime that they play it, it's exciting. And to know that it's the last track is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and allegedly it's about an abortion that he and his girlfriend at the time had. And obviously there's going to be some mixed feelings about that. But what I wanted is what she wanted. Unfriendly feelings, down on wounded knees. Unfriendly reasons some blind mothers need. Sell me down the river. What I wanted is what she wanted. Somebody told me I know where to go. Somebody showed me I was the last to know. I guess there was some thread in there that said it could also be about the media's treatment of the first album, Core. You read the words, it sells you life. They sell you their words, but it's a lie. So it's like, I'm giving you a story, but then they tell you what it's about. And it's not true or whatever. Kitchenware and Candy Bars. That's about like home life. And then Candy Bars, it could be for kids. It could also be for drug addicts who need a fix before they can get their fix. Because I watched a lot of NYPD Blue. And if you're having heroin Jones, then eat a bunch of like ho-hos and cupcakes and candy bars and stuff. And that'll keep you going until you can get a fix. But the fix better come fairly soon. Yeah, I don't want to know all about that.
What I wanted is what we wanted.
Can also be about betrayal. Like, did we really want to have that abortion? Was that really the best idea? However you feel about it politically, if you're a drug addict, have an abortion. That's the way I feel about it. You're not doing that kid any favors.
Yeah,
you're not doing society any favors.
You've got enough on your plate already.
Just have the abortion, okay? We've got enough unloved, fucked up kids in the world, okay? Everybody, and eventually he had kids with his eventual wife, so didn't need to do it. But then it ends 4.5 minutes in, and yet this track is over 8 minutes long.
Correct. If you have the CD, you knew that.
If you have the CD, right. And on the back of the CD, there's a big fat birthday cake looking thing that says 12 gracious melodies. But there's only 11 songs listed on the album. And there's a bottle of something on here, But the front cover, it never says purple anywhere on here, by the way. You can never find purple. There's
Unless it says it in Chinese.
Yeah, it's a Chinese kind of cherub riding an animal that's called a quillin. Quilin.
Oh, right.
A quillin or a killin. It's a chimerical creature that appears in Chinese mythology. So it's kind of a horse with a dragon's head, if you will. And then on the back is that big piece of cake. And the hidden track, called Second Album, starts at 4:54. And it's basically a lounge song. Something you'd hear in the Armada room right at the Holiday Inn.
The second album, 12 precious melodies worth listening. Hope you enjoy them like if it's sung to me.
The second album.
And it doesn't start right away either. Like, it's not like it's, 10
No, it's about 30 seconds. So if you
Yeah.
just let it play, you're like, okay, that's over.
Yeah. And it fits so nicely, but it's so bizarre.
It's so weird, yeah. Richard Peterson is the musician who sang on here. I guess he was a Johnny Mathis fan, and the track was engineered and produced by Peter Barnes in Seattle. I guess this is showing off their sense of humor here.
Yeah, correct. and just maybe not taking themselves too seriously.
No, but after going to number 3, Core went to 3 on Billboard. This went to number 1. It debuted at number 1, sold 250,000 copies its first week.
Jeez.
Went to 10 in the UK and was top 10. Went to 1 in Australia, top 10 in Canada and New Zealand and Sweden and almost in Norway. 6 million copies in the US, triple platinum Canada, double platinum Australia. Still only silver in the UK. They just were in a different mode at that point. But this kept the train a running. I mean, after Core goes huge in 92, they tour some, they put out the Unplugged album in 93, and then right after Kurt Cobain dies, they come out with this. Say, okay, maybe Nirvana's over, but we're still going. We've still got our heroin addicted lead singer, and we're going to keep running. So yeah, this is the only one of their records I ever bought, and it's still pretty darn good to this day.
I like this one more than I remember it. I was kind of like, when you said this, I was like, okay. Yeah. I mean, I remember it coming out. I remember the big tracks on it, but yeah, I don't think there's not a bad track on here. They do a good job of mixing a couple of different genres together. It's not just the same thing over and over again. I think these guys they don't get the credit they deserve for writing these songs.
I think you're right. Certainly the DeLeo brothers. I mean, I think the industry does. I think other musicians realize, hey, the DeLeos are the one who came up with the riffs and came up with the music and the songs and like that. But because Scott's this big personality and he's out front and he's famously addicted to heroin, that's where all the attention goes. And that's where it all went Nirvana. I didn't know who Dave Grohl was until Kurt Cobain was dead. Like, you got a big, tall bass player, you got this weirdo with the long hair behind the drums, and that's Kurt Cobain's band. That's basically the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Dave Grohl was until the Foo Fighters came out. And that's basically the way it was in Stone Temple Pilots. Like, they got a drummer, they got these brothers playing guitar and bass, and they've got the big heroin weirdo out front.
Correct. Yeah.
But I did get to see STP at the Louisville Palace, and he tried to climb up on like this Greek statue that's like on the side of the thing. I'm like, oh, here he goes. This is going to be fun.
So this is the night it all ends. Okay. And go.
It was only a few years before it did end, as a matter of fact.
How did they sound? Did they sound good?
They sounded great. Now, I admit, when we talked to Britt Lightning, I saw Velvet Revolver first, and then I eventually saw STP. Because after I saw Velvet Revolver, and I thought they were amazing, and Weiland did a good job there, I'm like, okay, if they come to town, I guess I'll see them. And eventually they did. And they ripped through these songs, these classic songs, plus, the next album, they had some good songs on it, but they ripped right through them. He's being a weirdo, shocking the people. I guess that's kind of what you come to expect from Scott Weiland. So I'm like, yeah, this is who he is. But I mean, and I know he's being a weirdo, but but he's cleaned up, right? I mean, does he feel like he still has to act this way? Or is this like, oh, I'm a heroin addict, this is just something that I do? I don't know. But it caught up with him eventually.
Yeah. They had a thing on YouTube. I guess they did this record start to finish it looked like somebody's basement in about 2020, 2022, something like that, with the guy they got from the X Factor. I think Eric Gutt is his name. And it sounded fantastic. The Gutt guy does a pretty good approximation. Like you wouldn't think it was Scott Weiland, but it sounds pretty good. But the other three are just on point. They are fantastic musicians. It sounded fantastic. If you like this record, check it out. Just search this, and it's one of the first things that comes up. But to see them play it and to hear them play the whole album track by track was pretty cool, because you see how it kind of all fits together.
That is cool.
There's a little bit they throw in about recording it, and one of the things was Eric saying about he asked Brendan O'Brien, like, hey, why did you use this microphone for this setup? And he was like, because it was the closest one there. Like, what do you want me to tell you? Like, he was definitely time is money, fast is funny. Let's go.
Gotcha. Well, it's certainly a moment in time from our lives. Could have been the end of grunge, and that's why Meatplow is first and not Unglued. I won't miss grunge. I still don't miss grunge. But it's too bad these guys aren't with Scott making more records, because they really did have something.
It would be interesting to talk to somebody who it wasn't us or wasn't this demographic, because grunge came out at a time for us where we were so excited to hear new music coming out at that time.
Right.
I kind of feel like if we were probably maybe 5 years older or maybe 5 years younger, we'd be like, I don't, It doesn't mean anything to me. But since this came out when we were ready to hear that, I think it's elevated.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it is hard rock, and we did like hard rock. We like the hair metal, hair band era of rock. And then this comes out, but it's not just about we live in LA and we use Aquanet and, bright colors.
Chicks everywhere.
Yeah, we're depressed. We dress like homeless people. We are unhappy all the time. We're not doing cocaine, the fun drug. We're doing heroin, the go lock yourself in the bedroom for 2 weeks drug.
Yeah.
I have to admit it was fun to go back and do STP's Purple here as it turns 30. It was a bigger part of our shared experience in college than I remember it. I kind of lumped it all in with grunge, and as I mentioned more than once, not only in this episode, but throughout the 184 episodes we've done so far on the Ugly American Werewolf in London, that I do not love grunge. I didn't like it then. Looking back, I really don't like much of it now. I did like some Alice in Chains, but looking back on that made me think, that's just too heavy and sad. I'm not that interested in that. Never really liked Nirvana, never liked the Smashing Pumpkins, still don't really. But this is pretty darn good. It's not just grunge. There's a little grunge in there, and they're of the grunge era, and obviously he's talking about some pretty heavy-duty stuff on here. But the riffs are great, some great melodies in there, and you have to admit that the man can put together a song, Scott Weiland, and sing it well, and seeing him live a couple times, I look back on fondly. You can't deny 6 million copies in the U.S. alone. One of the most influential bands of the 90s, Stone Temple Pilots. And as this was turning 30, we wanted to tie it in with our first concert memories, number 11, featuring Brit Lightning of Vixen, talking about that fateful day of her very first concert ever. And I hope you'll listen to that if you haven't already. So we want to know, folks, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You have to let us know. Email us. It's uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. You can let us know the bands, the concerts, the DVDs, the albums, the books, the rock properties you want to hear us talk about here on the show. Make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you think about it, guys, hey, please go out and give us a positive 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It just means a lot to us, lets us know what you like about the show, helps us find more rock and rollers like you, and if you send it our way, we might just read it here on an episode. Thanks, as always, to Pantheon Podcast for making us a part of the family, and thanks to our sponsor, rarevinyl.com, who does have some Stone Temple Pilots stuff. And if you use the code UGLY, you can save 10% off one entire order at rarevinyl.com. That's it for this week, folks. Stay subscribed so you don't miss a thing. And to all you rock and rollers all around the world, be cool and keep doing what you do to keep rock alive.